All right, guys, this is it. This is going to be the stream. If you have any issues, I'm pretty confident in the final version, it will not have the popping. But you guys got to understand, there's nothing I can do. I double and triple checked. It is not my end. It is not my end. If you're having audio issues, refresh it and hope it goes away. And when it comes to the ultra low latency mode, yeah, I checked that. Here's the problem. When I adjust ultra low latency mode, it like creates a new stream until I delete a bunch. I don't want to get into it. YouTube really sucks sometimes. I mean, my God, YouTube really sucks sometimes. Some of their settings, they will just change for you. Oh yeah, I want to say that too. Like, if you go back to some of my old videos, I've noticed some of them have a ton of ads now. I just want to let you guys know, I can't control that. I once got an email from YouTube saying we increased ads on all your old videos. And I was like, cool. Well, I didn't want you to do that. But so I want to say that too. I've seen people complain about the amount of ads in my videos sometimes and in my podcast. I try to make sure there's like 1 or 2 ads in short videos and like 3 in ultra long ones. Of course, the podcast might have 5 ads, but sometimes YouTube turns it into like 10 ads. So don't get mad at me if there's ads. That's YouTube. I can't control that. And if you want to listen to the podcast, subscribe to Broken Silicon on a podcast app. There's almost 0 ads. There's basically 0 ads, and the audio quality is higher. People complaining about podcast ads on YouTube. It's a video website, not a podcast website. I basically put Broken Silicon on YouTube as an ad to my podcast. Anyways, let me see here. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm looking at the Discord just as a final gut check here before I get started. Okay, let us get started. I am not drinking coffee anymore as I'm trying to not turn into rage mode after having to deal with that. I'm sorry, and other tech tubers I've talked to will understand this. The amount of effort we put into trying to make something, and then something completely out of our hands ruins it. It's annoying. Anyways, though, welcome to Loose Ends. This is the end of month, kind of mashup of lingering thoughts I have from content I've made and so on and so forth. And so I'm going to go through some loose ends, as the title describes, from this month. Then I will go through patron questions. Then I will go through the live Q&A. So if you want to tip me for a question, again, you're going to want to save that to the last half of this, which will probably be in about 25 minutes or so, because otherwise YouTube just can delete tipped questions before I get to them. It didn't used to, by the way. Again, that's just a new thing YouTube does. Thanks, YouTube. Anyways, though, first goofy reader mail to try to calm me down comes from Kerry Baldino. He says, very important question, deep dish or New York style pizza? Now, I'm going to be honest. If you're eating it normally, easily normal pizza. I don't understand. And I do want to say this too, because I've lived in Chicago. I live close to Chicago. I have friends in Chicago. I live around Chicago. I've been to Chicago, dozens of times, even outside of when I lived there. So I'm kind of a half Chicagoan person. And something we like to make fun of when it comes to people from LA or New York is how people seem to think we all eat deep dish pizza. If we go out drinking at the bars in Wrigleyville and then we want a snack before we go to bed, we get a normal pizza. Almost never does anyone eat deep dish pizza in Chicago. It is a specialty of Chicago, but it would be like a once a year thing, maybe. Like, no one eats deep dish even in Chicago. I just want you guys to know that. That's always like a joke people make. You guys eat deep dish in Chicago. No, we eat normal pizza. Sometimes we eat deep dish. I don't know. Opening reader mail. Actually, to be honest, guys, I haven't had a deep dish pizza since I was probably a little kid. I honestly don't even remember how it tastes. I can imagine. But anyways, let us get into the things from this month. And I did weave in a few reader mails during the open points from this month. Baba Burt writes in and he says, in the last Broken Silicon, you stated that the rumor that Ampere is on 5 nanometer is as likely as it having a secret coprocessor. Yeah, that's one way I put it. I don't know. I would double down on any specific numbers, but he says, How high would you rate that probability put into numbers? Oh, okay. So you're directly asking Baba Bert, especially after the recently leaked pictures. So here's the thing. I have thought about this. I'm not going to put into statistical numbers like a percentage. I'm not going to put a percentage on what chance I see of there being a coprocessor or on 5 nanometer. Although I think in one of my videos I said 50-50. I don't think what I like to do is talk about what it would mean if something happens. To me, that's much more interesting actually than like, oh, there's an 80 or 2% chance of this thing happening. No, I like analyzing what it means if something happens. And if I have leaks, well, I like putting those out there because it informs my and your opinions. But let me explain a little bit more. Here's what, and so I will answer specifically. Here is what I know about the NVIDIA coprocessor, right? And this is something Cortex talked about first after an immense amount of digging, right? I know, I don't want to say what he's told me because I don't know how much of it should be public, but I know from my own sources that NVIDIA has tested a coprocessor both on die and on die Ampere, by the way, early Ampere samples from, I believe, at the end of last year, so late 2019. I know for a fact NVIDIA was going to several houses and internally to test a coprocessor on die and off die. So it's up to you to decide if it's an Ampere, right? I know they tested it, but from the beginning, they were testing it on die. Now, you could argue they're just testing the performance difference between if it's on die, if it's off die. You could argue that, but I would also argue they could just be testing if the idea worked, if it was ready for prime time. And I've been talking about NVIDIA using, FPGAs and off-die accelerators since last summer. I've been talking about this for a while, that clearly NVIDIA's future is off-die accelerators to give them an edge in graphics, because you can't make dies bigger forever. Eventually, you're going to have to do something. And I don't think just chiplets. I think accelerators for ray tracing, DLSS, so on and so forth. So I think they will probably have that by Hopper, and I know they tested it on Ampere. Whether it's in Ampere or not, I don't know. And the weirdest thing about it is no one seems sure if it's in Ampere, even the best sources. No one. They know, some know it was tested briefly, but they say, I haven't gotten any word that it's in it. So the fact that we're like a week away from the full unveiling of Ampere, and there still aren't any of those, major leakers on Twitter or anonymous things showing details about how the coprocessor works, I'm tempted to say it's not going to be an Ampere, because shouldn't we know? And that's why I say it's one of the best kept guarded secrets ever if it's an Ampere. I know they tested it. I know it will come eventually, but no one's sure it's an Ampere, even the best sources. No one. And I'm talking about people who told me about Matisse 2 months ahead of time. I'm talking about people who told me about GDR6X before it was confirmed. Some of my best sources know it exists, but no one has had confirmation it's in it right now. So that makes me lean towards it not being in it. If you put a gun up to my head, I say it's not in it. But I know they tested it, and I know that some of my sources, almost all of my sources actually, can't take apart Ampere. Like, no one's just taking apart Ampere and sending me an email. So having said that, none of my sources would know either way. So again, that's kind of why I said 50-50. I don't know. That is my answer to the coprocessor question. Now, the 5 nanometer question. Again, I thought it's funny. I've talked to Jim and Matthew at Adored about this briefly. All I know, again, is that they validated all these chips on Samsung. And I know that the Samsung samples that were tested next to TSMC samples used like 30% more energy at least. So do with that information what you will. Someone freaked out in my Discord about me like disregarding Jim's 5 nanometer video, which couldn't be further from the truth. I love Jim's 5 nanometer video. And I think he made an excellent argument about the fact that it was supposedly initially tested on Samsung 7 nanometer. And then that makes sense why they would push forward with the fixed version of it. Really, 5 nanometer is just a marketing term. So I actually love that video from Jim. I have to say, I think that's unlikely too, because we have smartphone makers saying Samsung 7 nanometer nodes don't work well enough, and they had to switch to TSMC. So if Nvidia pushes forward with this, again, I like to talk about what it would mean. For me, it would mean I don't want to buy any Ampere at launch if it's on a Samsung 5 nanometer node. Because does anyone remember early Fermi? It had absurd failure rates. The GTX 480 launched with disabled SMs. They didn't even launch the full die because it didn't work. Like Nvidia pushed forward on a node that was problematic with way too power hungry cards, and it was one of their worst generations ever. And that's all I'm saying. I think Ampere will be really powerful. I think it will have incredibly good ray tracing. But for me, I would almost rather it be on Samsung's 8 nanometer, assuming it's as good as we've heard, right? Because Samsung's 8 nanometer is like a double refined version of their 10 nanometer node. That node works. That node's reliable. I bet that node can be pushed with a lot of power usage, even if it's not as good or as really it's just not as dense as Samsung's own 5 nanometer node. So that's all I can really say. At the end of the day, you know, maybe me and everyone else was just assuming it was on 8 nanometer, and this was another crazy secret that it was on 5 nanometer. But if they do that, it's not a very good node for 5 nanometer. That's all I'm gonna say. It could be though, but again, you put a gun up to my head, I lean towards it's on 8 nanometer. I do, just because that would be insane. You know, like if their 5 nanometer was this bad and no one knew it was on 5 nanometer until now. Could you imagine? Again, why has no leaker come out on Twitter and gone confirmed 5 nanometer? Why hasn't Igor's lab said anything? That's what makes me lean towards no. But you know what? I guess there's that small chance it's on 5 nanometer. And it has a coprocessor. It just seems unlikely to me. But again, to recap, I know they tested a coprocessor, and technically, I guess, I think the way I would put it is I think Jim's argument for 5 nanometer isn't insane. I think it's a sensible argument. I just think it seems unlikely to me. And I'm just being honest. Like I've seen some people get mad at me for like disagreeing with other people. It's like, I'm allowed to disagree with other people. It's not dissing them. Anyways, I think that's about as much as I can say rambling about that. The only other thing I will say is this. Cortex did point this out to me, and I honestly forgot. Like everyone keeps talking about how Cortex said the coprocessor is a ray tracing coprocessor. A large part of the video, he talked about how it could be used for other things like DLSS and other machine learning tasks as well. And I honestly forgot he talked about that. It was a while ago in a long video. So let me say that too. I've been told that actually the coprocessor may be for DLSS. So don't assume it's for ray tracing. It might be for anything else if it exists. So yeah, that's the last thing I will say about that. And yeah, I guess let's move on, right? Another thing I will throw out there is that Carbon Cry, technical editor for Moore's Law is Dead, is launching his own sister website. It's going to be called Scripts on Chips. And it's going to, or SOC is the abbreviation, and it's going to basically be kind of like the articles you've seen on www.mooreslawisdead, my own website, except he's going to manage it. He's going to try to get people to write articles, and I'm going to have a link to it on my website. So I think this is perfect. You know, Carbon Cry has been getting more and more and more into technical writing about these chips, scripts on chips. And because of that, I told them, yeah, man, look, my website's going to be under my control. So if you want to make your own website, go for it. And I will promote you and I'll help you in any way you want. So look out for that as well. Carbon Cry will be launching that website, and I'm not exactly sure how it will be organized, but he's going to be in charge of it completely. And it'll be kind of like a sister website to my own. What I think would be cool is if it's kind of looks almost like the same website, but he has full control over his stuff and I have full control over mine. So yeah. Okay, and that is that. Let us get in. Oh, I do have one more thing I want to talk about as well. I try to have one big point I want to make, and I think I do need to address this. And it's about people arguing over who gets credit and stamping exclusive on all of their rumors. So I just want to say this. I've seen people bring up the point that I've made a big deal about other people not giving me credit before. And I realize that I have made a big deal about it on Twitter and stuff. And so I acknowledge I'm not holier than thou with what I'm about to talk about. Having said that, though, if you guys have noticed, I haven't really been harping on Twitter about getting credit. I don't know. Honestly, time flies by. I think for like the past month. And that's because I think it's a waste of time. Like, I've just made my peace that video cards is going to intentionally not give me credit for anything having to do with Intel, despite I don't want to get into it. And I think there's no point, though, in harping about it. I've made my peace. If you guys want to share my videos and tell people I talked about Cypress Cove, how long ago have I talked about Cypress Cove? 3-4 months ago now? This year's going by so quickly for how crappy a year it is. Like, go for it. And I appreciate you selling my I don't sell my videos, not for resale. I appreciate you sharing my videos. I appreciate you pointing out to other people that like I talked about something first, or that Cortex did, but I don't see the point in harping about it myself. And that's just kind of an open thing to say, I think, to other tech tubers and Twitter leakers. You guys, can we all just take a chill pill? I think everyone needs to take a chill pill and stop bickering. There's no way I could possibly know everything everyone else has talked about. And I've said that for a while. That's why I put exclusive on one video and then I never did it again, because I just feel dirty. Like there's a bitter taste in my mouth when I put exclusive on something, because how can I possibly know no one else has talked about it before? And that's my message to everyone. Twitter leakers, other tech tubers, whether it's Adored or Cortex, guys, there's no way you know if I've talked about something unless you've watched all like 200 of my videos from start to finish recently, because even I forget some things I covered first. Like my one of my videos from last year keeps getting a big resurgence right now because I talked about how I think Nvidia is going to use 8 nanometer last year, way long ago, and it was just based on my analysis of the nodes that are coming out soon. But like, should I stamp exclusive on that and attack anyone who talks about 8 nanometer? Like, I didn't invent Samsung 8 nanometer. It's been a while. Other people can talk about it without giving me credit. You know, if you realize it, I appreciate it. But yeah, that's all there is to say. Is I just think everyone who leaks stuff needs to take a chill pill and realize most people aren't maliciously stealing your info. And I'm not going to try to harp on other people myself anymore, because I think it's a wasted time and it's just bad for your mental health. And it's honestly just dickish. So that is something I did want to say, because I have seen people say, oh, you used to make a big deal about it. Yeah, I never meant to make a giant deal, but you're right. I kind of did sometimes. And so notice I'm not doing that anymore, and I'm over it. And I think everyone else needs to get over it too. The fun is supposed to be talking about tech, not screaming I was the first one to say one thing. That's my opinion, you know. Anyways, let us move on. All right. That was a serious thing I wanted to address, but I really thought I had to say it, you guys. Okay. On to the Patreon questions. So the first one, as usual, I feel like there's always an OLED question, isn't there? There's always an OLED question. What do you think will be the first to reach the market at a reasonable premium? Say a $1,000 to $1,500 price point, a 27-inch 4K OLED, or a 55-inch 8K OLED, or a 27-inch 4K micro LED. So if you mean micro LED, like as in the one that's basically OLED without burn-in, I don't think that's coming to 27 inches for like 3 or 4 years. And I hope I'm wrong, because micro LED would be great competition and perfect for the monitor space. But I think that's years and years away. I think it's more likely OLED just becomes better and smaller. Although, again, OLED is small and it is big. The problem is the tech used to make the big screens can't get to 27 inches, and the tech used to make the small OLED smartphone screens isn't quite good enough to make them big either. That's the problem with OLED. So if you're asking me what comes first, 55-inch 8K OLED for $1,500 or 27-inch 4K OLED for $1,000, I think 27-inch 4K OLED will be here in about a year. I think 55-inch 8K OLED will maybe be here late next year, but I don't think they're going to charge $1,000 for that. 8K OLED and a 55-inch screen. Yeah, I think they're charging like $3,000 for that or something. So I think 27-inch 4K OLED first. Having said that, I think that's late next year still, pretty much, just because there's no rush for them. And I'm hoping mini LED, which is different than micro LED. Basically, mini LED is if fall displays with dimming zones didn't suck. That's what mini LED is. I hope that gets here soon, so we can all finally get like a 1 to 10,000 dimming zone 4K HDR monitor for like $700. That's what I want early next year. I kind of doubt OLED will be there, although I do suspect there will be like 36-inch OLEDs early next year. And as usual, that is Tom's OLED rant, as he does every loose ends, it seems. Moving onward to some Apple questions. Let me write down a timestamp for this. So this would be at the 21-minute mark. Okay. Decal writes in, do you have any news on Apple Silicon? Some of my Apple buddies are absolutely convinced Apple is going to wreck the laptop market. Well, yeah, Apple fanboys think Apple makes alien tech. Although they make some good processors. I don't mean to shit on Apple. It's just, I know. I'm sure Apple fanboys think the ARM A14X is going to be the best. But anyways, sounds like hype to me, but I'm also excited for a solid drop from Apple. Have you heard anything about what we can expect from Apple's next generation of laptops? Honestly, I don't know that much, but it does sound impressive. And I do think they will be small enough to take full advantage of TSMC's 5 nanometer, which is really just going to be 7 nanometer using like 30-40% less energy. But that's going to be pretty sick. And I do think Apple can make some impressive chips. I actually do. And that's really all I can say about that. I don't have exact numbers. And I'm not willing to say Apple's going to crush the laptop market. I'm just never ready to say that, right? But I do think that you should both not overestimate Apple nor underestimate. I know that's not really a fun answer, right? But that's what I think. I think it will be impressive, but don't expect it to take everything. All right. Jerome Jansen writes in. He says, hello, Tom, recent new patron. Oh, thank you. Now that developers have access to Apple Silicon dev kits, do you also see more news related to Apple's chip development and how it might affect AMD and Intel? x86 versus ARM. I guess that's really the same question almost, right? All I can say is, again, I expect its IPC to be up there with Intel and AMD's best. I expect it to not use a lot of energy. And I don't know about it hurting x86 because all of these x86 chips coming out seem really impressive. And what I'm hearing about AMD's Zen 4 APUs, I mean, right, they're going to be great. And again, I know people make fun of me sometimes. I think Intel's Alder Lake could be pretty good as well. So you got to compare Apple's chips to those because they're not out yet, right? You got to compare at least Apple's chips to like Zen 3. But yeah, that's what I think about Apple. So let us move on to, let's see here, some APU questions. Let me put down the timestamp again. All right. APU questions. Confirmed SK writes in, and he says, with the launch of Renoir, lots of people were surprised that AMD had decided to stick with Vega and its GCN architecture. Again, guys, Vega's compact. Vega's a proven design. If you think about the amount of work it takes to integrate a CPU with a GPU, if you have a GCN thing you've made a million times, you know it's going to work. There's going to be less random sudden issues that pop up when you're integrating them into an SoC. That's why they go with Vega. And frankly, Vega's not as much far behind RDNA as you think, guys, when it's a smaller chip. It's actually pretty close, to be honest. I mean, look how good a 2.4 gigahertz Vega games right now. It's just 8 compute units. I think we can say Vega doesn't suck. Really, does it? I mean, it's good. I think big Vega couldn't scale with more compute units, and that's what RDNA is meant to do. But when you're down to 8 compute units, Vega's not that far behind RDNA and IPC. And it's a really compact design. Anyways, this makes me wonder if AMD will decide to skip RDNA 1 for their 2021 APUs. Let me answer this. Most APUs I'm hearing about, Cezanne has Vega again. Why? Because they just want to update Renoir with Zen 3 and use the same low-cost GPU that's compact. That's probably why, if they go with that. Although I have heard they may last minute change it to RDNA 1, but don't quote me on that. And then also I know that like Rembrandt, I believe I've been told Rembrandt is RDNA 3, and I've been told about all of these Zen 3 Plus APUs with RDNA 2 and a Zen 2 APU with RDNA 2. So are they skipping RDNA 1? Well, guys, RDNA 2 is kind of fixed RDNA 1, right? So why would they use RDNA 1? I don't know. Having said that, I have heard about this big Renoir that I just haven't had time to get to a video about because of all of the news. And based on my information, there is a chance AMD may bring out some type of a big Renoir that has RDNA 1, or at least a more advanced, or at least some hybrid of Vega and RDNA 1, which really RDNA 1 is kind of a hybrid of Vega and RDNA 2. It was kind of like, here's the cutoff point. We're going to make this work and get it out while we fix RDNA and call that RDNA 2. So I think there is a chance there may be some big Renoir with RDNA 1, but otherwise, almost everything I've seen on roadmaps is RDNA 2 or RDNA 3. So they're mostly skipping it. At the very least, that's what I will say. Okay. Snails writes in and he says, any speculation as to the almost complete lack of Ryzen U series laptops with SMT? Are all the dies that can handle SMT simply being made into H series chips, or is there something else I'm missing? Surprised none of the premium notebook manufacturers took a swing at the 4800U. Well, I know some did. Yeah, I can't say, guys. All I know is that Renoir is sold out and they're having trouble filling orders. Why are they all using... I don't know. Maybe there's some break point in OEM costs. I know Intel has like I've seen Intel's OEM cost sheets, and it's like i540, i760, i770, and then all of a sudden, like there's eventually some break point where like one of the i9s is twice as expensive. They're basically, and Intel's basically giving half of their mobile chips away for, $20 bills, like that type of thing. I don't know if that's what's going on with AMD, and that's why they're electing to use the 4800U. But I can't really say. All I know is Renoir is on high demand, and it seems like all of the 16-thread models are just going to high-end laptops, right? Or at least premium, we should say. Sarah Light writes in and said, do you guys have any insider information about the next generation of Microsoft Surface devices using Ryzen 4000 or better? Well, as I've said, I had that Whispers of Cezanne, which it sounds like it really wasn't Cezanne. It was probably Van Gogh video that I had in like January or February. And I believe that chip was being tested in a Surface. So I don't know. I suspect within a half a year, there will be a Surface with an RDNA 2 APU or something crazy. Outside of that, I can't really say. Except that and I also know that AMD is pissed they didn't get the nicest version of the last Surface, the one where they had the 3780U. So I know AMD's pushing Microsoft to have the premium version of the Surface. So let's just say that. Okay. And moving on to Ampere questions, which I know you guys want me to say Ampere. Je parle français, but in English, you say Ampere, guys. Look it up. Google it. Google how to say Ampere. That's how you say it in the English language. Avenger, the 22nd, writes in, and he says, Ampere gaming cards revealed by Nvidia CEO sitting in his living room gaming, wearing his leather jacket and swag pajamas. I think this is a likely scenario considering the Ampere kitchen launch of A100. I know this is a joke question, but no, joking aside, I think Nvidia is going to go all out with their Ampere marketing and presentation. It's obvious they want to get out first and steal mind share and market share before RDNA 2 launches. I think we know why. So, yep, that's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to see some pretty big production values for that Ampere thing. Peroxide writes in, and he says, when you saw the size of the recently leaked 3090 pictures, what was your first reaction? Disappointment? Or is this what you expected? Watch my Ampere arrogance leak video. I was told, I think over a month ago, again, I forget how long ago things are at a certain point, that newer samples of Ampere were made on Samsung, clearly, and we're overwhelming air conditioners. That's out there long before this cooler was shown. So when I saw the triple fan cooler, I was like, oh God. I was hoping they were going to put, right? See, what I was hoping is they were going to put GA102 on Samsung, cut it down like by 10, 20%, like, just disable the 10 to 20% least efficient, most leaky voltage SMs so that they could make it use like 320 watts. And then that they'd make the 390 on TSMC. When I see that triple slot, I'm like, oh crap, I think the 3090 is also on Samsung. That thing's going to use a boatload of energy. And one of my best sources told me too, this is why I made that video on Friday, that AIB models that are overclocked, right? That the Founders Edition is like a 350 watt card, and that the AIB models usually use 10% more energy, right? So what does that mean? That means they're pushing like 380 watts and upper. And so if you overclock an AIB Ampere, again, I think 400 watts. To be clear, I don't think the reference model will. That would be absurd. They're going to probably make it like a 350 watt card. But I think overclocked models, especially something like the MSI Lightning, right, or EVGA Kingpin, I think those are easily pushing 400 watts. And I know that they're shipping an 8-pin splitter with the 12. I've been told it should be a 3 8-pin. So 3 8-pins for that 12-pin. So that, guys, 3 8-pins, it uses a lot of energy. That's really all there is to say. No, that doesn't mean because it can use 3 8-pins, it's going to use 500 watts. That's not what that means. It's for voltage regulation, guys. But it's going to use a lot of energy. There's no way. Like, and it's funny how many people doubted my reports on that, but yeah. And I hope it's on Samsung, by the way, because if that 3090 is on TSMC and using that much energy, oh man. Anyways, Melodic Warrior writes in, hi Tom, I've been scratching my head over the cooler design on the Ampere reference from day one of its leak. To me, it just never looked like a good design that I would want to put much faith in for overclocking. I don't know. I'm extremely skeptical of the fan's ability to draw air out. Well, I think the fan design actually is going to work better than some people expect. I don't think Nvidia would go with that weird looking design unless it was for a good reason. I think it'll be as good as you could pretty much get. Just something I'll also say, if AIB cards cost more, I would kind of just recommend the Founders. Wait for reviews. Maybe I'm wrong. Wait for reviews. But I suspect Nvidia's reference design's pretty good, actually. Anyways, what I see happening is similar to what they did on the FX 5000 series. Oh, I don't think it's going to be that bad. For those who don't know, that was like one of their over energy usage generations where the card was like, it was louder than a GTX 480. It was insane. But where a good chunk of the cooler, even for AIBs, were just awful. I will say this. I have heard that some AIB models for Ampere are pretty loud right now. So, and remember, AIBs basically have the same triple fan designs they've been using for years, most of the time. They always redesign them eventually, but most of the time. And so with that in mind, they build these cards for usually around 300 to 320 watts. So if they just have to shove this onto Ampere with a different heatsink, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure some AIB, you're going to want to watch reviews, guys, for Ampere, for the 3090, for the AIB models, because some of them I do think will be loud. But anyways, continuing Melodic Warrior's question, I would love to see Nvidia prove me wrong, but in your opinion, do you think that overclocking potential is going to be a hinder of specific memory temps? Yes, I'm referencing Igor's lab article, or do you think that I'm going about it the wrong way? I mean, it is worth pointing out that one of the hotter samples I saw had the faster memory, and this does seem like a last minute thing. Like, again, remember GDR5X was announced months before Pascal came out. So this seems very last minute that they moved to this in some ways, and so maybe that's why it's so hot. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely, I think at the end of the day, power usage is power usage. At the end of the day, heat is heat. The heat has to go somewhere. And if there's a lot of heat, it's probably because it's using a lot of energy, whether from a co-processor, whether from GDR6X, whether from the die. I've seen people argue on Twitter, especially about my video, like, oh, it's because of the memory. Well, cool. Then it's the memory making it use a shit ton of energy, but a shit ton of energy is a shit ton of energy, guys. Okay. So that's all I really have to say about that. And just remember that I think they're pushing the 3090 hard most likely, and that the lower models will probably use like 250 watts. Like I think the 3070 will be okay, you know. Anyways, though, Christopher Foster writes in and he says, so with all of the rumors flying around since we were so close to Nvidia launching their new GPUs, I've seen two major price points thrown around a lot. Guys, save your tips. I'm not quite to the tip questions yet. He says, now I understand that prices are set last minute and nothing is for certain, but in your opinion, do you think Nvidia is actually scared enough of competition from AMD to launch a 24 gigabyte card for $1,400, or do you think it's more likely they will try to get the highest price possible, $2,000? Well, like let's break this down. If it, you know, yeah, well, let's assume it's Samsung 8 nanometer. That's a pretty cheap. I'm pretty sure the die, even like a 600 millimeter square die, is no more than like $300 to make, and I'm pretty sure it's way less than that, way less. So just keep that in mind. That I think I'm probably an order of magnitudes off. Let's say it's $300 to make the die. Okay, the RAM. Well, I know cheap GDR6 is like $6 a gigabyte in high volumes, maybe even $5. I'm not kidding, guys. That's how cheap it is per cheap gigabyte of GDR6. I know that the faster memory is like 16 or 18 gigabit per second is like $10 to $12. So $15 per gigabyte. I mean, shall we do some math? Why not, right? So if it's a $300 die, so let's do 15 times 24, 360 plus 300. Then let's even say it's $200 for the cooler. Or I don't even think it's that much. Let's just say it's $100 for the cooler. So $760. Let's multiply that by 1.5 for the Nvidia tax. What about 1.6? Yeah, that's still $1,200. 7, 8, 9. Yeah, so it's almost a 100% markup at $1,400. That's my answer, guys. Would Nvidia be scared enough to sell this for $1,400? They're still making like crazy profits, even with that much memory. Yes, I think they would sell this for $1,400. The only reason they've sold the Titan RTX, which probably cost about $500 to make, for $2,500 is because they can, because they could, because people bought it. So do I think they would for $1,400? Yes. If AMD fails, I don't know. But I think at a certain point, they know AMD is going to be locked down in information for the next month. And so they should just be aggressive. And again, at $1,400, there's a gulf in price between the $800, most likely, I don't know for sure, of course, 3080, which should be better than the 2080 Ti by like 20% or something. And then the $1,400 3090, which should be about like 40% better. Why? Well, they leave room for a $1,000 3080 Ti that could just be like a 12 gigabyte version of the 3090 with like one more SM disabled. Like if AMD pulls a home run, they can just launch something 15% better than the 3080 for 15% more money at $1,000. And then that's still Turing prices. And then they also have room to launch a Titan above the 3090 because the 3090 should still have like one or two SMs disabled. They still have room to make a full die with at least 24 gigabytes of GDR6X. In fact, I believe the 3090 should use 21 gigabit per second memory. And I've read that Micron has 23 megabit per second memory coming at the end of this year. So if Nvidia wanted to, they could launch a 384-bit 12 gigabyte card with 10% faster memory than the 3090. 12 gigabytes is enough. It'd probably be faster than the 3090. And they could just sell that for $1,000. But then they could say the 3090 is 24 gigabytes. That's why it's more expensive. And then they could sell a Titan with the ultra fast memory, or maybe a 7 nanometer version, right? That is more efficient and has tensor memory compression and stuff for like 2,500 again. I think that's what's clearly going on. I rambled on and on and on. I hope that answers your question. Let me just write that down as that was my pricing answer, right? Hyperio writes in and he says, do you think there will be any appreciable difference between PCIe 3.0 and PCIe 4.0 for Ampere cards? Yes. High-end Ampere cards, I believe, will have a performance difference with PCIe 4.0. I'm like 100% sure. Guys, we already know from testing that the 5500 XT, even in like Horizon Zero Dawn and some games, had an appreciable difference. Now, the 5500 XT has only 8 lanes of PCIe, but it's like half as strong as a 2080 Ti, like full half the frame rates, if not less than. I think it's less than half as strong. It might be a third. And so if a card that weak with 8 lanes needs PCIe 4.0 for like a 10% difference or something, right? Okay, well, double the performance, double to 16. Yeah, I think you could get to a 10% performance loss or even 20 with the very high-end Ampere cards. Probably not in most games. Most games, the difference will probably be a few percentage points. Again, I'm not saying all games, but I know there will be games that there's a difference. So yeah, I think that's an issue. And I think benchmarking websites would be fools to benchmark Ampere with a Comet Lake setup. Like, I think you're an idiot if you do that. All righty. Brian Steiner writes in, and he says, rumor has it the 3080 and 3090 will come out at launch. Yeah, I think so. How long until 3060 and 3070? I mean, I don't know if I've never double checked this rumor, but I've heard that let me put down a timestamp here, actually. Let me put that 35 minutes PCIe 4.0 and 3070 release. I think the 3070 is already in production. That's what I've heard. Don't quote me. I'm not 100% sure, but I've seen other rumors of that, and I think they looked pretty legitimate, right? I think they were always going to make at least a version of GA 104 on 8 nanometer or 5 if it turns out, and the same thing that they are going to make GA 106 on Samsung the entire time, because again, it's about capacity. They need to make their mid-range on Samsung so they don't have capacity issues. They can just push them farther, and GA 106 will use what, 200 watts? No one cares. It's not as much of an issue as it is with the top end cards. So, I mean, I think they're ready to come out whenever they want. It wouldn't surprise me if they were out before the end of the year. I mean, they're already stopping production on some of their cards right now, even the mid-range. So, yeah, I think before the end of this year, if they want to. But it all depends on when Turing stock dries up too, right? So, okay. James Craster writes in, and he says this, and he shows a link with a... Yeah, so he has a link to the new Nvidia 12-pin. And so I'm not going to show... Well, here, I'm not going to show you guys the link, but basically based on this picture, Nvidia's new 12-pin connector is actually about the size of a traditional 8-pin, maybe slightly bigger at most. And so that's a thing to keep in mind. This new 12-pin coming out takes up the same amount of space as an 8-pin, but it can provide 600 watts. Again, Nvidia is introducing this not just because Ampere might use a ton of energy, I think, but also because it allows Nvidia to just have a graphics card connector. If it's only this big and it can provide 600 watts, then this can just be something that provides power to any card. And I think this makes sense. I think a world where we either have a 6-pin or a 12-pin is good. I don't want to have to plug in multiple 8-pins anymore. Just have a 12-pin. How much energy it uses doesn't matter. It's enough, baby. And I think that's what's going on here. And again, the bigger connector allows for better voltage regulation too. So yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. And he asked also, James Crasta asked about what AIBs think. I know some AIBs have been scrambling, right, to include support for it in their new power supplies, but there's going to be adapters, so whatever. All right, Ricky Tan writes in, okay, so now here we are to RDNA 2 questions, and then we'll get to the live questions, guys. Save those tips. So this is from Ricky Tan, in parentheses, I survived rush hour 2. A lot of people didn't, Ricky. Any news on RDNA 2 price points? A $1,400 card, if we're lucky, pulling 400 watts is just insanity. Again, remember $400 watts with super overclocked models. But if you overclock Ampere, I think that's how much it's... I have heard Ampere's decent at overclocking too. Like, you might be able to hit 2.3 gigahertz with the best models. You might get like 15% overclocks. It's just make sure you have a crazy good power supply, guys. And when it comes to RDNA 2 pricing, I really just don't have much to say. You guys know that I don't like speculating on price. I just don't, because I think it's a waste of time. I mean, imagine if you speculated on RDNA 1's pricing, then a Sapphire rep said it was $500. Then AMD announced it for like, what was it, $450? And then they debated, supposedly. Again, I don't know if I believe they debated or if they lost a game of chicken with Nvidia. And then they sold the card for $400. They can change their prices even after the card's announced. So speculating on prices, I don't think is a worthwhile. It doesn't matter if I have a source telling me the price. Like, I would tell you, but I don't think you need to read into it. It's going to depend on competitiveness, and we still don't know that for sure where it's at. So That's all I can say. But you guys have known I've been talking about Navi 22 for a while. I don't think a 56 compute unit card with 256-bit GDR6X, something almost as good as a 2080 Ti, I don't think that costs more to make than a 5700 XT when the 5700 XT launched. So I see no reason why AMD can't make a Navi 22 card with 56 compute units and sell for 450 or 400. And with that in mind, I imagine the top cards would be around 700. Like, they're going to want to replace the Radeon 7's price point, I would think. But I do think if AMD is competitive with the 3080 or above the 3080, if AMD can come even close to a 3090, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some Frontier edition for like 1,000 or more. But you don't need to buy the Frontier edition. That's all I'll say about prices. Clean Sweep writes in and he says, if RDNA 2 is going to have down to the wire launch, getting product out before December 31st, I think it might be early December or November, actually, guys. What does AMD need to nail for the launch to be considered good and great besides actually working drivers at launch? Yeah. Well, Clean Sweep, I think AMD, I'm pretty confident they're not going to say anything. Absolutely anything until Ampere is fully out because they want a competitive advantage. And I don't think they could even paper launch until like October. So what I think is going to happen is AMD will start teasing things right around when Ampere comes out to try to dissuade buyers. And after that, I think their original launch date was November 11th, but I've heard it slipped to December. And I think Navi 22 comes out about a month after that. So, which I've been told, Navi 22 is not coming out this year. It's like, well, it's only about a few weeks to a month behind in testing compared to Navi 21. So if AMD really wanted to, I think they could paper launch Navi 22 this year. But yeah, I guess anyway. So when I say down to the wire, I think it will come out this year. I don't think it's going to be like a paper launch on Christmas. But it is going to be after Ampere. And anyways, what do they need to pull off? Well, yeah, working drivers. And I think just a good balance of efficiency and price performance. I think if AMD really can at least compete with the 3080, that they should only push one model super hard. I don't want to see another lineup push super hard. If you guys will go back to early RDNA 1 rumors, you'll know that the die Navi 10 that ultimately went into the 5700 XT, I believe was originally going to be clocked more around 1500 megahertz and be like a 150 watt card that was only like 30% weaker, 20% weaker. And people undervolting these cards have said the same. But, they decided to cancel the top die. And so they pushed the 5700 XT super hard. And then they also pushed the 5700 a little hard. And the 5500 XT uses, that should be a 75 watt card, which, don't get me wrong, right? The 5500 XT's die, there are versions of that use 50 watts in laptops. So if they wanted to just make it 30% weaker and twice as efficient, they could. I think AMD's finally just got to accept that if they can't take the performance crown, competing with the 3080 is good enough. That you shouldn't push the top card past the 3080 if it means using 350 watts. I think it would be better for AMD to launch a $700 3080 competitor that will still have great margins on it and make it use 250 watts. I think launching something cheaper than the 3080 that's about the same performance but uses like 100 watts less, I think that's a better move. I think you look better. Now, if you want to take one model of Navi 21, you want to take like one model of that and push it to like 350 watts with liquid cooling, that's fine. Just don't do that to the rest of your lineup. Make Nvidia look inefficient. That's what I think they should do. That's what I think. I think if they can compete with the 3080, it's time for them to try to take the at least the efficiency crown. That's what I think. All right, so that's my answer to you. And one more reader mail, and this comes from Jalan McKenzie, and this is about the consoles. So let's see what we got here. Let's see. Hello, Tom. I wanted to talk about how older hardware, particularly the original Xbox One in relation to the Xbox Series X, can compromise game design. Resolution can always be scaled, but complex level design and assets can present challenges for older hardware. Right, that's true. It doesn't matter what you do. Eventually, rendering that geometry count in an open world game on a weaker system is a problem. He goes on and says, Resolution can always be scaled, but complex level design and assets can present challenges for the older hardware. Halo Infinite is facing a lot of development challenges, and there's been rumors 343 is canceling the Xbox One version of the game. I mean, I think they should. I don't get the point, right? Halo is for selling Xboxes. Don't dumb it down for a previous gen console, especially one that didn't sell as well as the 360. It just doesn't make any sense to me. If you want a flagship Halo game, and I've heard rumors it's been delayed a month, which if you guys listen to the latest Broken Silicon, I also said, I don't think the new Halo is coming out early next year. I think they need to go back and redo half the game for the Series X. I think it's late next year. And then again, that's what happened to Uncharted 4. Like halfway through development, they decided it wasn't going to be ready. So they delayed it 2 years and redid half the game. You don't want to screw up one of your best franchises, right? You don't want to. So, and there's other games that have stories like that too. And so that's all I can say is I don't see a point in them putting it on the Xbox One. That's my opinion. If you want a next-gen console, have a next-gen console. Yeah, so I guess that's what I will say. I don't have much to expound on that, except that I'm sorry, like if Microsoft's gonna make the argument the Series X is so powerful, then you can't put your flagship game on your underpowered Xbox One. This is just brass tacks. This is facts. Either your next gen console is really powerful, or it's not because it fits on the previous gen. You both can't. One or the other is true. So like I'm not a fan, but it's just true. So. Yeah, I mean, like the Xbox One's graphics card is like the equivalent of an HD 7770. It has DDR3 memory, right? Which is why 7770, right? The 7770 had 768 stream processors, same as the Xbox, right? Yeah, same as the Xbox. Wait, no, wait. Yeah, I think 768. That's what the Xbox has. It has 768 stream processors. DDR3, it's, the 7770 had GDR5, but it was 128-bit. The 7770 was clocked a bit faster. It was clocked a lot faster, even if the Xbox had more compute units. That's what it is. And the 7770 is weaker than my netbook. So your next, the Xbox Series X should be at least stronger than a 2080 Super. You can't build a game that maximizes a 2080 Super and also maximizes like the equivalent of a GT 1030. Like you just can't do it. And then the processor is like 10 times weaker. It doesn't have an SSD. No, no. There was pop-in in that demo. It's probably because they designed it on a hard drive. Get rid of the pop-in. I want a next-gen gaming experience. All right, that is my spiel on the Halo stuff. All right, I see you guys tip me early. Let me put down a timestamp, 52:45. So now on to the live Q&A. I'm going to scroll up and answer as many of the tipped questions as I can, but some of them may have been deleted. All right, Jack H writes in and he says, mostly for gaming, 1080p 280 hertz or 1440p 170. 1440p 170 for my money. Some people want ultra high frame rates, and someday I hope to have a 480 hertz monitor. So and you know what I have here? 120 hertz 4K, 144 hertz 1080p. I didn't upgrade my big screen TV until my TV could do 120 hertz. I like fast refreshes, but at a certain point, I think you just have to understand. Let me put this down as a timestamp too. I think you just have to understand that most games aren't going to run above 144 hertz no matter what processor you have. The engine's not built for it. I didn't say all games. I didn't say the games you may use competitively. That's not what I said. That's not what I'm saying. But there's going to be a lot of games you get that aren't even Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1 can't even go above 200 hertz. So you're not even going to use 80 hertz of that 1080p monitor, but you would use 170 and 1440p. That's why I have a 4K 120 hertz. For me, it's a blend. If I have a game that's limited to 60 hertz, at least I can run it in 4K. If I have a game that's hard to run, well, at least I can go to 120 hertz, even if my processor, like even in Mountain Blade, when you have 1,000 enemies on screen, yeah, that game's not running 200 hertz, guys, but it might do 120 if I turn down some settings. That's where I'm at. I think 120 hertz is finally mainstream when most big screen TVs even have it and the consoles will support it. So I say 4K 120 hertz is what I go for, or yeah, like 1440p, 170 hertz or something around there. I think you'll get more use out of that than like a 300 hertz 1080p display. Now, if you're an esports person, that's your own decision. But I know there's even experimental 480 hertz displays you can buy. So if you're esports, I'd say you just pony up the money for one of those. Okay, let's see if I can get to some more of these questions. Love your channel predictions biased. You said Turing in my 9900 KS won't age well. Well, they won't for the price. 9900 KS is 1200 on eBay. Sell that shit, dude. I would. And any Turing card will age better than non-DLSS cards. Yeah, but again, here's the misunderstanding about my opinion about Turing. And again, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I say I could be wrong. Let me write this down as a timestamp. Turing aging. Right? But if Ampere is going to be 4 times better ray tracing performance than Turing, it might as well not have ray tracing. Like, that's my opinion. Like, next gen games, like, is it really worth it for future proofing if you can only do ray tracing at 20 frames a second and Ampere is doing it at 120 and AMD is doing it at like 60 or 80 hertz? I don't think that means it aged better, personally. I could be wrong. And yes, Turing will age better than Pascal, but it's newer than Pascal. Big deal, you know. And when it comes to the 9900 KS, we're already seeing from a console port, Horizon Zero Dawn, that AMD's architecture is favored. And I think that's what you're going to see next gen. I think Nvidia has been riding high and getting fat on the fact that they've been the gaming standard on PC for so long. They're not going to be anymore. Most gamers in the do-it-yourself market are buying AMD. OEMs are switching to AMD. And Intel's not going to have that optimization advantage anymore. And so it could amount to not a lot, but it could also amount to Intel aging pretty poorly. And again, the 9900 KS is like 10% better than a 3800X at most anyways. So I don't get the point of paying triple as much. Anyways, let me move on. Ash gives me an insane tip. Thank you. Don't forget to ask questions, even silly ones. My favorite food, if you'd give me a tip, guys. I feel bad when I get a free tip. But I do appreciate it. I do. Kevin Ayers writes in, thoughts on Ampere Titan. I would imagine it's coming at some point. But if I was NVIDIA, I would want to design something on 7 nanometer with HBM. If you're scared about RDNA 2. If you're not scared, who knows? Who knows what they'll do? But I am told the Quadros are still going to have 7 nanometer from TSMC because they want them to be efficient for data centers. So I assume some version of that, hopefully with tensor memory compression and NV cache, which sounds really impressive to me, comes to gamers as like a 24 gigabyte Titan with faster memory than the 3090. Although you think they'd make, I've heard it could be 48 gigabytes. That sounds insane to me. However, I've also heard that Nvidia is going to charge a little less for Quadros because they expect more competition from AMD. So maybe the reason they would make a 48 gigabyte Titan is that they're going to charge like $3,500 for it. And then the 24 gigabyte Quadro is $3,000. And the, what would it be? It would be the Q6000 will be like $5,000 anyway. So maybe the Titan's just going to cost as much as a Quadro anyways. And that's why it is 48 gigabytes. I mean, Titan Volta costs as much as a lot of Quadros. So maybe that's why there's a 48 gigabyte Titan. But I got to say, it'd be hard for me to get a Titan if it doesn't have HBM. Once you go to 16 gigabytes of HBM and a Radeon 7, and I know it's a stupid argument. It shouldn't matter if it has DDR3, right? If it's stronger. But there's something so cool about having 16 gigabytes of HBM. Maybe I'm just an idiot. All right, let me move on here. Stefan Hart writes in, will Ryzen Gen 3, I assume you mean Zen 3, have 16 free PCIe lanes? Oh, yeah, I don't know. It kind of sounds like it's going to have the same PCIe lane count as Zen 2, although I have heard it might have 4 more PCIe 4.0 lanes. And that was the rumor about X670, although still seems like there might not be an X670, so I don't know for sure. That's really all I can say. I've heard 4 more lanes potentially. I hope so. I don't know for sure. He says, I want to run 2 NVMe 4.0s and RAID 0 on a board and then have another one. Yeah, I know. That was the one compromise I had with the 3950X, but then again, I still have a dual SATA SSD RAID for storing stuff for my YouTube channel. I have an NVMe drive for booting, and then I have room for another NVMe drive, and then I have another SATA drive in there. I have room for 2 more drives, and I already have 3 drives put in. So it's enough. I think X570 is enough for overwhelming majority of people. And I know there's motherboards that have like support for 8 solid state drives. So yeah, maybe only 2 or 3 of those are NVMe, but it is enough for most people. And that's when AMD wants you to just buy Threadripper. And honestly, if you need to use like 8 NVMe drives, I assume you have the money for Threadripper. I'm not saying I don't want it to be cheaper. I'm just, you gotta at a certain point accept business as business. All right, let me make sure I'm not missing any reader mails. It may have just deleted some. Again, if I missed it, guys, sorry. I'm trying to get through them quickly. Some people tip me too soon. Tello says, I like 1440p, 144, or 165. I agree. Thank you for tipping me to tell me you agree. And Keith writes in, can we expect new GPU generations every year for a few years, like RDNA 4 in 2022? I think AMD's cadence they've said is a year and a half. So I think maybe a paper launch of RDNA 3 next year. That's what it sounds like. And RDNA 4 probably in 2023. That's what I expect, mid 2023 for RDNA 4. I don't think every year. I think they're going to keep launching stuff to keep the limelight. I mean, that's what you saw. They even launched that Vega 20 Radeon Pro out of nowhere just to say they're launching things every few months or every couple months. But I don't think so. I think RDNA 3 very end of next year, if not early 2022. And I think RDNA 4, 2023. But we could, who knows? Zen 3 is coming out, less than about a year and a half after Zen 2 as expected. So again, it's just like every year and a half. Clinton Shaw tipped me and deleted it. Okay. Redacted. Probably answered his question earlier or something. Keep scrolling. Famicom89 says it's caching the answer to keep up with console memory architectures. I mean, that's what NV cache sounds like what the consoles are doing. I've just heard that NV cache may only be in like the Quadros and the Titan, unfortunately, which will, of course, give Nvidia an excuse to make you upgrade to Hopper because you don't have NV cache. But aren't SSDs for consumer cards out of the question because they destroy the pro market? I don't know about that. I think everything comes down to consumers eventually, Famicom. It's coming. Good SSDs are coming. They're coming. Don't worry. You don't need to buy them yet. You don't need to buy that thing Linus waved around, that freaking $5,000 SSD. You don't need that. No game's using it right now. They will use it late next year. That's when you buy it. But by next year, we need the software to utilize these SSDs as well. It's a waste of money. When you need SSDs for games, they will be cheaper. Don't worry about it yet. Let's see. Trevor Clark writes in, keep up the great content. How long do you think it will be before we see games that could actually utilize a card right now? I talk about how my Radeon 7 is fine at 4K 120 hertz gaming if I turn down some settings, but like it'd be nice if it was twice as strong. And that's what the 3090 is probably going to be. Almost twice as strong as my graphics card. So yeah, I mean, games will use it right away. I'm sure Cyberpunk will fill that sucker up. And, there's always more dumb things you can turn on, right? Goblin Freak writes in, OLED can make 22-inch, 27 and 32-inch 4K 60s now for cheap. Well, then they should sell them to consumers. Again, I hope good LED monitors for less than 1,000 are here early next year. I'm just a little skeptical. I think things will keep getting cheaper, though. Clinton Shaw writes in, with the 3090 being a 3-slotted card, does this mean air-cooled CPU coolers will have to switch to an all-in-one? Yeah, I don't know. I think, can I be honest with you guys? I think all-in-ones are common sense for CPU cooling these days. There's some decently reliable ones that are reasonably priced. You can get a great one for $100. I think you're gonna have to put a lot of thought into cooling, though. That's the answer, Clinton, for the 3090. You're gonna have to put a lot of thought into cooling for the 3090. It doesn't matter. Just like the 295 X2. 295 X2 worked fine. 500 watt card, but yeah, your case needed vents. Like the heat's got to go somewhere, even if the card works well. So people are gonna have to put thought into it. To be honest, that is about at the limit of how much. Like 320 watts, I'm fine with. But once you get into 3-slot cards, I'm just almost fundamentally against a card that big. I'm like, no, these are the constraints. Make it fit in this size. I could fit the 3090 in my case. I just have to move a few things around. And yeah, I don't know if it's worth it because like the 3080 is probably what? Like 20% weaker for 20% less power usage. I would almost just say get a 3080. And I'm pretty sure AIBs are going to make 20 gigabyte versions of the 3080. So for prosumers, there you go. Of course, they'll probably charge $1,200 for them or something stupid. Let's see. All right. Did I get through all of the? No, I didn't get through all the tips. Again, YouTube's really annoying in how it organizes it to a certain extent. If AMD made a Threadripper APU with a 6700 key on die and 2 HBM2E dies, a small I/O, would I buy it? No, I don't. No, I don't think so. You know, yeah, I mean, and the answer is just because I have a 3950X and a Radeon 7. That's good for me till RDNA 3. I'm fine. You know, I don't really need anything else. And frankly, I think the Radeon 7 for my uses is still a bargain. $700, 16 gigabytes of HBM, a terabyte a second of bandwidth. Not the best for gaming all the time, but for everything else, I'm pretty happy, guys. Also, it's red. You can't underestimate how important it is. My graphics card is the same exact color of my case, the exact same cherry red. So that's another big 10 out of 10 thing right there. So joking aside, though, no. That'd be awesome for a laptop. And maybe you're referencing the Threadripper APU, which, as you guys know, I might start checking out new cities to move to early next year. And I'm hoping to get a super laptop to bring with me and test it out on the road. Hopefully, if we can ever travel again in the United States. Anyways, I'm rambling. Andy McKay writes in, first time builder, will 400 to 600 pound RDNA, and he's saying like the English currency pounds, RDNA 2 3000 series be powerful enough to utilize a 4K 140 hertz monitor, or will it? Yeah, of course. Guys, right now, my Radeon 7 does 4K 120 hertz right now. Turn a few settings down to medium and high. Most of the settings are ultra. Turn off AA. It's fine. There's a couple games I have to turn it down more, but like even Metro Exodus, I run in 1800p at high settings, which looks like almost the same as Ultra in that game. And I have like some kind of scalar thing turned down to 0.8. It looks better than 1440p, so I'm using my monitor's extra pixels at least a little bit, and it runs above 100 hertz, locked 120 with a Radeon 7. Metro Exodus, not an easy game to run. These arguments that 4K is hard, I don't know. 4K has kind of been conquered since Pascal, guys. It's just you have to turn down some settings in some games, and Ultra is a waste of time. Sean Shannon writes in, what do you think of the PS5 SSD effect on MSRP? I'll answer that one. Let me put a timestamp on that because I like that question, Sean. 10710 PS5 SSD cost. So my understanding about the PS5 versus the Xbox Series X is that the Xbox costs slightly more, and that the PlayStation 5's the SSD isn't as expensive as you think. That's what I find so funny. When Sony wants to manufacture 10 million PS5s, I think at least by the end of this fiscal year, if not the end of this year, 10 million PS5s. When you start getting to the tens of millions in volume, the raw material cost starts to become a bigger deal. This is something I think people don't understand. R&D is a sunk cost. Sony worked with Marvel. They actually gave a talk about their server chips at Hot Chips, by the way. Marvel worked with Sony to develop the controller in the PS5's SSD. That cost is done. This recuperation thing, that's a cost that they're licensing with them to also sell to enterprise. So there's not this giant R&D cost in the PS5. They want to make their money back, but that's a sunk cost. And in terms of how much the SSD costs, it's actually a slower clocked, higher channel SSD. It's a 12 channel memory controller instead of like 4, right? Or 8 in a normal SSD. And it's clocked a little slower. It's not as expensive as you guys think. It's not. I think the PS5 costs less to make than the Xbox. I know there's so much FUD going out right now about the consoles, and it's just desperate fanboys. I don't get it anymore. No, the PS5. Look, the PS5, the disc version costs around somewhere between $420 and $460 to make. My estimate's $440. I've heard some say $470. I've heard some say $450. They can sell the $500. They can sell the disc version for $500 with a profit, and the digital version for $400 with probably a slight loss, which they're happy to do with the digital version that locks you into their store. This idea that it's going to cost $600 is absurd, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to put anyone on, blast here. I'm just saying I disagree, right? And if I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. PS5 is not going to cost more than $500, and therefore, At least the digital version isn't. And therefore, I think Xbox, it'd be suicide if they charge 600. It'd just be suicide. Although I have heard Xbox was considering 600, so I will say that. But also expansion drive costs for consumers. Again, when it comes to an expansion drive on the PS5, just don't worry about it yet. I don't get it. 800 gigabytes is a lot. Games aren't going to take up more space almost ever because they don't need to duplicate files for a hard drive to seek across the drive, right? They don't need to duplicate files. It's just instant no matter where it is on the drive. So they can make, and yeah, I saw that like the Modern Warfare 2 from that you get for free on PlayStation Plus. It's like Modern Warfare 2 Remastered. It takes up like 120 gigabytes, a remaster of Modern Warfare 2 on the console. It's like, okay, you know, that's because they're duplicating files so they can load it fast enough. You know, that goes away with SSDs. So if you have an 800 gigabyte SSD, I think you can fit at least like 5, 6, 7 games on there. You tell me you really need to switch between 10 games on the fly when the console comes out? You're going to buy 10 games at launch. Really? Why? I don't buy it. So I think 800 gigabytes or 1 terabyte with the Xbox is more than enough. And by the time you want to upgrade the PS5's SSD, which again, it's going to be fast, so you don't need to buy it to get it faster. I don't even think the 7 gigabyte per second ones are going to be really faster because they'll have less memory controllers. Less channels, which that's its whole thing. You can look up from the Mark Cerny presentation. I think by the time you want to upgrade the PS5 storage late next year or even 2022, they'll be cheaper. That's my answer. All right, I rambled enough. Eddie De Castillo writes in, hope all is well. Have a beer. Yeah, I am after the failing of the stream. Will there be an AMD card equivalent to the Nvidia Titan? I've heard AMD wants to launch a super version that's like only from their website and compared to a Titan, but I don't think they can market it. They almost marketed the Radeon 7 as a Titan too, didn't they? Like they called it Radeon 7. There was no RX in the name. They said it wasn't really a gaming card. I mean, I think AMD is considering that. That's my answer. And I'm still on a 1080 Ti. Is 2022? Oh, is Navi 2022 worth the wait? And Navi 22 probably won't be that much stronger than a 1080 Ti. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll be a lot stronger. Maybe it'll be 30, 40% stronger, but I think it's more like 20% stronger than your 1080 Ti, most likely. So I don't know if that's worth the upgrade. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I think not. I think let's wait for prices. If it's $700 for something better than a 3080, yeah, I think that's finally the 1080 Ti upgrade you've been waiting for. I guess that's how I'll answer you, right? Uranisco writes in, he says, do you think the GPU price increases will continue until a newcomer will come to the GPU space or people run out of money one day? I think, there's a reason Nvidia is pushing Ampere so hard. It's because they had to, and I've said this a million times, Nvidia had to decide, are we going to make our cards efficient on Samsung, but not beat AMD by as much as we want to? And if we do that, then we're going to have to lower prices back to Pascal prices. Or are we going to push the cards super hard or have more limited availability? And I think the answer is Nvidia might have more limited availability and they're going to push the cards hard because they want like a 50% across the board performance increase this generation so that you don't complain Turing prices are here to stay. It's up to AMD to lower prices again. But don't forget, Nvidia launched a $1,000 Titan. AMD then launched a $550 290X that was stronger than the $1,000 Titan. You know what happened? AMD lost market share. So gamers are to blame for that they bought Nvidia back then. And so I think AMD will offer better price performance because they have to, but the chances of AMD, launching something better than a 3080 for $500 is just basically zero. Could they launch something stronger than a 3080 for $700 if the 3080 is $800? Sure. But I think that AMD is not going to double price performance again. I think they're always going to go for something that's around 20 to 40% better price performance because they know that's all they need to do and that it never helped them in the past if they did more than that. NeoWise0, did you talk about the pricing of next-gen consoles? Yes. And there will be a timestamp. Moving on. Did I get them? Did I get all the tips? There's no way I did. Let me see here. SSD prices to plummet due to low demand oversupply as per UFD Tech. I don't have much to say, Eddie Del Castillo. All I can say about SSD prices going down is that I've been saying they're going to keep going down over the next 2 years for 2 years now. So whatever the reason, SSD price is coming down. I agree. I agree with UFD Tech if that's what he said. Will it be consistent? Will every month will it be cheaper? Maybe not. But overall, price is coming down, guys. Prices are coming down. Remember, UFD Tech said I was silly for thinking the consoles would have SSDs and be this powerful. Whatever. I don't know why people always underestimate consoles every gen. Matt Greenfield writes in, he says, I did just say your predictions were biased, but whether you choose Big Knobby or Ampere, I think we both fill out our LG C9s quite nicely. I love this channel. I don't take anything personally, Matt Greenfield. You guys can challenge me. That's what I have a corrections and omissions sections in the Discord for Broken Silicon. So yeah, but if you, I address disputes on the podcast though, so you guys can hear me talk for 10 minutes and really get my full opinion. Twitter is not where you go to argue. I'm done with Twitter in that regard. For when it comes to Twitter, it's for self-promotion to put out my videos, and that's it. That's it. Not bothering with the arguments on there. If someone attacks me, whatever, dude. I don't have anything. Nothing but peace and love, dude. Attack me all you want. Dirty Dub Steppen writes in, how do you think AMD incorporates the PS5's 6 priority graphics pipeline into Navi 2 in the PC space, if at all? Well, like Mark Cerny said, and let me see, can I do a Mark Cerny impression? If our customizations were effective, then you may see them in later Radeon graphics cards on desktop. And that means this was a successful collaboration. That's what Mark Cerny said. That's my impression. I think that's a dead-on Mark Cerny impression, by the way. And all I can say is I think it's coming. I know AMD's working on high bandwidth cache 2.0. If that's not an RDNA 2, and it could be, I'm sure it'll be an RDNA 3. And I've heard some wild things about RDNA 3. Like specifically, I'll give you guys this little secret here in the middle of nowhere. It's long been rumored that there's RDNA 3 customizations in the PS5. I have heard as of today, and I heard this before. I heard this before from someone else, that the PS5 was capable of doing clock speeds per compute unit. So that's a pretty radical idea that you could, depending on what the compute unit's doing, clock it lower to have less heat and energy usage. And that might explain the variable clock speeds. They might be slightly underclocking some compute units that are handling different tasks like ray tracing or something. I've heard that's going into RDNA 3 from a different source. And I never told anyone this before. So I know that RDNA 3 may do per compute unit clock speeds, which sounds crazy. And per compute unit, like ray tracing controls, which would make sense. That would go hand in hand, wouldn't it? Let me put that down as a timestamp too, since I just revealed that 15 RDNA 3 whispers. When was that? It's like, yeah, 1 minute and 15. Okay, so I hope that you know, and when it comes to high bandwidth cache stuff, it's going to have to come to desktop eventually, dude. Mukesh McKenzie writes in, with USB 4.0 basically becoming a Thunderbolt 3 port, do you think external GPU prices would come down for laptop users? I hope so. I've always said this, like eventually if I could get like a 20 core laptop on Zen 4, which again, before you laugh, hey, the 3950X can already be TDP down to 65 watts, right? And with that in mind, a 5 nanometer 3950X should use like 35 watts. I see no reason why they couldn't make a 54 watt mobile 20 core in about a year and a half from now. And if you did that, and then it has integrated graphics that are, you know, at least as good as an Xbox Series S, I don't know that I need a desktop anymore. I think I might just get like one of those crazy expensive, I definitely get a warranty, then like $4,000 laptops, and just say, this is my device. I bring it everywhere with me. I use it for gaming. I have external monitors, a dock. And then when I plug it into my dock, you know, maybe it uses an RDNA 3 graphics card. You know, I hope that becomes the standard. It's just the problem is, again, graphics, I know USB keeps getting faster. I know Thunderbolt and USB keeps getting more bandwidth, but cards keep getting stronger too, and I don't think that's slowing down. So it's like, oh, now, and I don't know the exact specs, so don't quote me, people, please. Let's say you go, now USB 4 can have the bandwidth of a full PCIe 3.0 slot. Well, that would still bottleneck as high-end Ampere card or Hopper card or RDNA 3 card. So still not enough. You know, you need to get it to a point where it doesn't even remotely bottleneck the top end for it to be worth it, because otherwise they make some pretty powerful compact cards that you can just put in your laptop and then you don't need a dock. That's my answer. My short answer is yes, I would consider just having a laptop, and that could make prices come down. Eric Hawkins writes in, any chance AMD might ever release something like CUDA so that the AI and NN groups can use something besides NVIDIA? Yeah, I think that's something they may consider with RDNA 2 or RDNA 3 based on what I've heard. But again, I think they're just going to make it open source. So I think it's not going to be this big CUDA competitor in the sense that it's their own version. I think it's going to be an open source thing, because that's what AMD does, Eric. All right, let me see. Oh, another question. At what speed is DDR RAM fast enough to be used as virtual RAM for graphics cards? Well, I mean, right now, it's just what type of virtual memory for how much of the stuff you're doing on screen. Right now it is. Like what I've been told is that NV cache can dynamically use all of your hard drives, solid state, well, no hard drives, right? All of your solid state drives and RAM and the video memory, not just the DDR and your graphics card, but also an SSD as kind of a dynamic cache, just like the PS5 is doing. That's what I've heard NV cache can do. And so it just depends what you're going to use it for. And DDR5 gets up to 8,000 megahertz, they say. That's as fast as GDR5 and lower latency. So I think you're going to see this thing too with next-gen cards. Once DDR5 becomes standard, you're going to have low-end cards that have DDR5 on them, and GDR5 is just kind of gone because there's no point in GDR5 if DDR5 is lower power, lower latency, same bandwidth. So I think that's what you're going to see is just a lot of GDR6, some GDR6X, and then DDR5 for like the low end cards. All right. So I think that answered your question. I'll put timestamp down for that, right? 1 minute 20 DDR5 question. All right, let's scroll down. Chris B writes in, I'm sure they'll let gamers archive SSD-based games to local external disks. Space won't be an issue. Yeah, that's another thing I want to talk about as well. Again, people freaking out about, not to dismiss the concerns, but freaking out about SSDs, costs, and like, oh, my SATA's not fast enough to hold a game. Keep in mind that if you're someone like me, for example, I have a 5 gigabyte per second Sabrent PCIe 4.0 SSD, and then I have 2 SATA SSDs in RAID for backing up stuff, and then another 1 terabyte SATA for backing up slower stuff that never needs to be fast. That's like my pictures and movies drive, the 1 SATA SSD. If you download a game from Steam, you could just have like a 500 gigabyte NVMe Gen 4 cache for games that's partitioned in Steam. And then what they could program it to do is just download most of your games to the SATA SSD, which is 500 megabytes per second. So let's do the math then. Let's say you have a 50 gigabyte game, right? Let's say you have a 50 gigabyte game. If it can move, if a SATA SSD can move 500 megabytes per second, let's even say 550 because that's actually what it is. 0.5. So say 5. Right. So 50 gigabytes divided by 0.55 divided by 60. That's a minute and a half. That's a minute and a half to move a 50 gigabyte game to your NVMe drive from the SATA. So you could just store all your games on a SATA drive. And then when you want to play a game you haven't played for a while, you don't need to re-download it, guys. You have 500 gigabytes there, can hold 5 games at once. You just click the transfer. You just have to wait 1 minute to get it on your SATA drive. Your NVMe drive, and boom, you're gaming. That's probably the solution for PC gamers. You will be expected to have a fast SSD. You will need one, but it doesn't need to be 10 terabytes. It can just be like 500, hold a couple games, and you can swap stuff between the SATA SSD. That's probably what's going to happen. So I wouldn't worry about that. Next gen PC. I hope that makes you guys feel better. And that's just spitballing here. Like, they're going to come up with solutions, guys. They're going to come up with solutions because they want to sell you games. Will 850 watts be enough for the 3090? Yeah. Unless you have like a 22 or 18 core Skylake X or Cascade Lake X, I guess, right? Or you get like an Ice Lake X that uses like 500 watts or something. Like, Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how many 8 pins, right? How many 8 pins come on your power supply? Do you have like 6? Because I've like some pretty powerful power supplies for mining rigs. I still have lying around. I should probably sell them. And like they'll have like 10 8 pins. And if it has 10 8 pins, yeah, you can power a 3090. It'll be fine, guys. Bryce and Jameson says, also, will SSDs and M.2 slots be able to buffer for video cards? Or is access to latency too much due to physical distance? I don't know. We're just going to have to see. It sounds like NV Cache may do that a little bit. All right. Oh my God. Did I get? Oh, nope. William C. Wright writes in, should I return an EVGA 2070 I just bought for $670? Yes. Yes, I do. If you can get your $670, let's put it this way, right? I'll put that down as a timestamp as well. Sell 2070s. If the 2080 Ti is $1,200 right now, I see people saying they can sell them for $1,300 because the stock's drying up. If it's $1,200 right now, and then I say it's going to lose at least half its value, let's just say that's what happens, just for argument's sake. That means a $600 2080 Ti on eBay. So what do you think your 2070 is going to go for? Probably $300. I would return it. I'm not saying everyone has to. And I know this is a controversial statement. I know some people argue with me, oh, then what am I supposed to game with? But you're asking my opinion. Yes, I would return it. Because the 3080 is going to be stronger than a 2080 Ti. And then below the 3080, what are we going to get? 3070, probably just below the 2080 Ti for what? $600? Then a 3060, probably around a 2080 Super in performance for $400. It's better than your card for $400, and it's coming out in a few months, dude. I would sell it. That's all I'm saying. You know, I that is my honest opinion. Oh, I got a tip for the Mark Cerny impression. I'm glad you guys enjoyed the Mark Cerny impression. One of my favorite impressions to do. I missed this one. Den Vero writes in, of note, my 3950X goes to 51 watts using wind power plants. Yeah, it's really efficient. Thomas Buckley writes in, AM5, Zen 5 on 5 nanometer, place your bets, or write that down as a time. No, I don't need a timestamp for that. Well, I mean, think of it this way, right? Zen 3 is still 7. Zen 4 should be 5 nanometer. Very end of next year, I think Zen 4 is 5 nanometer. So that's end of 2021. I don't know. You know, I think there might be a Zen 4 Plus or something. Who knows? Zen 5, I think 4 or 3 nanometer. That's what I think. But I'm not 100% sure. It would depend. Is Zen 5 going to be more like Zen 3 and that it's more iterative on Zen 4? Maybe it's just 4 nanometer refresh in 2020, late 2022 or early 2023. I don't know. If it's a big overhaul again after Zen 4, I think 3 nanometer. I'll be ready by then, baby. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss questions. YouTube is like deleting some things. I am noticing I missed some. So I'm trying to make sure I don't. Gareth Evans, catch up. 2x Madmen rambling about GPUs. Not sure what that means, Gareth. Yep, I got that one. Mark Cerny impression. What kind of chair do I have? I don't remember the name. I know some people have been asking me that because they hate the look of gaming chairs, and I do too. It's some executive. You know what? You've tipped me. I'll answer your bloody question. What am I thinking, right? Amazon. What are my orders? Chair. I'll answer the question. All right. The chair I have, OFM Essentials Collection, Racing Style, SOF Leather. This is just the name of it on Amazon. I'm sure you'll find it. I'm going to type it into the chat. This is the name on Amazon. That's the name of the chair. Moore's Law is dead. But you tip me, so I should bother to look it up for you, right? I mean, like, come on. Let me see. How old is your dog? Almost 8 years old. Got her in Detroit 5 years ago. Yeah. Like to this day. Like as of like a month ago or something. Yeah, she's 8 years old. Crazy energetic though. Very good health according to the veterinarians. I'm sure she'll have at least another 5 years. So don't worry, guys. She'll be here for a while. Would you consider a small form factor over a laptop? I think I'm always going to want both, man. If anything, I consider just a really high-end 14-inch laptop or even 15-inch if they could make it bezel-less and almost as small as a 14-inch over a desktop. At this point, right? Just because laptops are getting pretty damn good, in my opinion. The problem is if it breaks, you lose everything. Whereas with a desktop, if a component breaks, you can just replace that part. Would I consider small form factor over a laptop? I would consider small form factor over a desktop replacement laptop. That's what I've always said. You can get like a $400 cut down Renoir APU laptop that has 8 hours of battery life, costs you nothing, lasts for almost all day, and then get a high-end $800 gaming desktop that's better than a $2,000 laptop. That's what I recommend. Just get a $1,000 desktop and a $400 laptop over a $2,000 laptop. That's what I think. Unless you're really doing crazy stuff on the go, then, well, it's up to you. But I'll never get a desktop replacement. They're just too big. And I'm looking at laptops. So is Dan, by the way, and I think I picked his out. It looks pretty sick. It's got a 6-core, 12-thread, and a 1650 Ti. It's an 15T from HP. Looks pretty cool. Because Dan's a lab student boy now again. He's now a grad student, so he needs a laptop again to teach classes as Danny becomes a professor slowly over time. Mike Farino writes in, doesn't EVGA have the step-up program where if a new GPU comes out within 90 days of your purchase, you just pay the difference in price? I think they do. So maybe just look into that, right? I'm not an expert, though, so don't quote me. I know there's more. Okay. Ken Shinofkin writes in, release date for you spelled it wrong. Ryzen 4000 Zen 3, asked by John Bustos. I think October is the date that I've heard. I think October for Zen 3, if not November. So there you go. What specs can we expect for the 4700? I want to upgrade to it from a 7700K. Well, it's nice of you to help Josh Bustos there. And again, I appreciate that if someone tips and I miss something. I think the 40s, there's rumors, and I think I've said this in Broken Silicon in my rampant speculation section, that the Ryzen 4000 may be Renoir in APU only. They may save the 4000 series for naming their APUs since they have so many different APU series coming out. I think that makes some sense. But I don't, so but if it's 5700, 4700, I don't know. My hope is the 4700. To be honest, I would kind of hope it's, and you guys are going to laugh at me, but I don't care. I would hope it's like either the top 8-core or a 12-core. Like, even if they charge, right, even if they charge $400 for it, which the 1700X with Zen 1 was $400 at launch, guys, so don't call me crazy. I would rather they call the 4700X and give it a 12-core, and then have the 4800X be a 12-core, and then like actually move the 8 cores down to the $600 and $500 nomenclature. Look, that armchair, I'm being an armchair CEO, I'm an asshole here or whatever, but that's what I would do if I was AMD. Even though they're not increasing core count, I would make the 4950X the 5 gigahertz 16 core, hashtag 5 gigahertz everyone's been waiting for. I would make the 4900X a 16 core with previous gen clock speeds, the 4800X 12 core, the 4800X 12 core, and then the 4700 and 600 would be 8 cores. That's what I would do. Like, I would get people ready for moving up core counts per segment, because what are you going to do when Zen 4 comes out with like 24 cores? You can't just, I don't know. That's what I would do. I would start bumping it up early. Even if they're not going past 16 cores, I would start bumping up stuff early. That's just me, though. That's kind of what I would do. What do I expect? I don't know. It's like 50-50. They just do the same thing they've always been doing. But I mean, how dumb was it the 3800X was called the 3800X? It should have been called the 3700X and just been $400. I don't know. Steikum Hank writes in, I need to pay for school. Invest in AMD or Nvidia. Well, this is not investment advice. I just think there's more exposure to downside risk with Nvidia. I never know when, they're so valued now relative to where I think AMD can go. But I don't have stock in any of these companies anymore. I might buy stock in some other companies again. You guys know I own Bitcoin. But I sold a while ago, frankly, right before the pandemic. And I think I'm just going to not do it. I have friends like, oh, you got to get back into AMD. It's like, yeah, but it makes me objective to not own stock from these companies. And I'm afraid, I mean, let's be honest, guys, I could be accused of insider trading. And it might be if I buy AMD, because I know I received more info about RDNA 3 today. I know stuff other people don't know that's public. So I think I should just stay away from these stocks. There's always other stocks, you know, like Tesla or these other energy companies out there. And you can just buy those. But yeah, I mean, that's what I think. Not investment advice, not investment advice, not investment advice. Sorry, I need to respond to someone here because I have a day in 2 hours. Let's see here. Let me just make sure. All right. Anyways, still got plenty of questions. Do you think we get a 3080 Ti for I think it's pretty clear they're going to make the 3080 strong. Dame Pletvirik. Hope I said your name right. I doubt I did. And if they're going to charge $800 for the 3080, which I think they probably are, no, I think $1,000 for the 3080 Ti if it ever comes out. And I think it's probably going to be a 3090 performance with half the memory if AMD pushes them. Otherwise, slightly weaker, you know. But I just don't think Nvidia wants to launch a 3080 Ti. I think they're basically making the 3080 almost a 3080 Ti to hedge their bets. And then depending on what happens with AMD, they'll consider launching a 3080 Ti at whatever level of performance. David Dealrich writes in, I think I saw you have an Xperia 1 2. I think that's what I have. Sony phone names have gotten absurdly stupid lately. Like what name? I think it's an Xperia 1 5. It's like a compact Xperia 1 thing. Sony's naming schemes are insane now. Like I don't know what they're doing, but yeah. He says it's Xperia. He goes, I think I saw that you have an Xperia. How do you like it so far, and why did you choose it? You know, I guess I'll write this down as a timestamp because some people might want to know my cell phone. I am gonna use Android. Right. I have nothing against Apple iPhones, really. I've had to use one for work, and I think they're fine. But I'm sorry, there's just a lot more open apps on Android. You can't even get some of the Bitcoin apps on Apple. And I mean, look what's going on with Epic right now on Apple. There's just a more open store. I'm going to use Android. And I don't like Samsung phones. You can. Don't have to agree with me. I kind of want a more simple OS than even Apple gives you. I want the simplest, most simple OS ever. That's why I own Xperia. Xperia phones, if you buy them unlocked, of course, I have no idea what Verizon shoves on them. If you buy them unlocked, which I always do because they're way cheaper, Xperia phones tend to be the most simplified version of Android you can get. They make the cameras for iPhones, so they tend to have really high resolution cameras capable of 1,000 frames per second slow motion. You didn't hear me wrong. It does 960. I don't know if this one does, but my previous one did 960. It's the best one they make. I think it can do 1080p at 120 hertz, 720p at 240 hertz. Like they tend to have high resolution, high frame rate cameras. Their camera software isn't actually usually as good as Samsung or Pixels or iPhones, but I like the high resolution stuff. So sue me. And they tend to have good audio. Again, it's Sony, right? So good audio. It's just a simple version of Android and also they usually are more compact. I like the design of them. I don't like, that unlocking thing on the back of phones. I like that it's just the on button right here unlocks the phone on the side of it. It's just boom, a touch screen. Like I like that. They always have a camera button on them, and they have since since a decade ago. Like the Xperia Play technically had a camera button because of the R1. So they tend to have camera buttons, high resolution cameras, long battery lives. They tend to be more compact than the competitors, and their version of Android is the simplified version. And I don't want my phone to do a bunch of crap. They also have a good multitasking option too, despite being a simplified version of Android. That's why I tend to buy them. They used to be really waterproof too, and they still are, but they've walked that back. Like they did an unboxing, I believe, of the Xperia XZ, like Z2 or something underwater. They did an unboxing underwater with scuba gear to show how waterproof it is. So that's why I like them. They're very popular in Europe, very popular in Japan. Almost no one owns one in America. Oh, they also tend to have a ton of RAM and storage. So this, I believe, came with 128 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes of storage. That's what this phone came with. And it has room for an SD slot. So I have like 500 gigabytes of storage total on this phone. They don't nickel and dime you for it. And then it's 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it was, that's why. Because they have great specs and they do what I want. That is why I own Xperia phones typically. Although I don't always. I've owned Motorola's and all these other phones too. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just telling you, like you can call me a whatever you want, but that's why. Timothy says, I have a 9900 KS and mobile. Sell for a 3900X. I mean, if you sell, I would just wait for Zen 3. And I have a feeling that 9900 KS will hold its value, as people have pointed out. So I think you can afford to wait for Zen 3 to come out. And then if you really want it, sell it and get Zen 3. That's my advice, Timothy. Del Roy Thats Harding writes in, do you think Sony will have the PS5 teardown next week? I like this question. All right. I'll put a timestamp here because I got a lot to say about fucking PlayStation today. So, as you guys know, I said that I had information about PlayStation 5 exclusives, which I'm still told are there. The same ones I revealed before, and that they should do a reveal in a couple weeks, a month ago. And yet here we are. It's August 23rd, and we still don't know the goddamn price of the PS5. If it's not abundantly clear before, it should be now. Sony's not saying shit until Xbox reveals the rest of their stuff. And I've even heard Sony has considered insane things. Like Sony's considering opening pre-orders without telling you the price. I've heard that Sony's considering only revealing the price in late September, like a month or two before their console comes out. And I think we just have to make our peace with the fact that Sony is refusing to lose this game of chicken. So, and if you look at like viewership and polls, all evidence suggests there's like double the interest, at least in the PS5 compared to the Xbox. So my honest opinion is I think Sony can afford to wait as long as they want. I think Sony has looked at previous generations and they're like, what did we do right with this? What did we do wrong with this one? And I think one thing Sony thinks they did perfectly is only announcing the PS4's price after the Xbox One. And so I think they look at what they did last gen and they want to do all successful moves again. So I think they're just going to wait for Xbox to reveal the price, reveal their exclusives. And I know they have at least a couple of big exclusives they're saving to reveal, including a launch one, as I've said many times. In fact, there might be 2 launch ones, to be honest, guys. Like, there's a lot of people guessing which launch exclusive I was talking about, and I think people have, I'm not going to say because I promised I wouldn't. I think people have narrowed it down to a few. It might be all 3, but that you guys are guessing, to be honest. But that's all I can say. So I think what Sony wants is Xbox to reveal everything, and then I think they're going to just, I like I've said before on Broken Silicon, I almost wonder if Sony has the reveal live stream done. Like it's done. Like a 1-hour live stream where they reveal more exclusives again, more third-party partnerships again, and they're just waiting to type the price and press render and then upload it to come out in 2 days. I literally think that's what Sony's doing right now. I think they know what they're doing. I think they know they want to sell the top one for $500. They probably want to sell the digital version for $450, but if they have to, they'll go cheaper for either one. And they're just going to wait. They're just going to wait. And it's getting ridiculous. That's all I can say. And so this is what I say to Microsoft. Microsoft, reveal your console. Come on. Sony's in the driver's seat. It's up. If Microsoft reveals their price after Sony, it's almost like they're reacting to Sony. And I don't get why they would be. If Microsoft wants to take market share, they need to launch as soon as possible. Like I've heard the Xbox Series S is coming out after the X because they want people to think of Xbox as powerful, so they want to launch the weaker one later. I think the shrewder business move is to launch the Series S freaking now. Right now. Do it now. Reveal the Series S now. say it has the same IO, the same SSD. It can play all next-gen games. It can play your current-gen games at higher resolutions. It has an SSD, guys, and you know when it comes out? September, 2 months before Sony for $300 or something. That's what I think Microsoft should do. I think launching the Series S after the PS5 is already announced is a mistake. I think they should. I mean, imagine how crazy that would be. And it would be the cheaper version. So everyone would say, wait, this can run Halo Infinite. This has an SSD and it's only $300. I'm buying this now. And then maybe they won't buy a PS5. I don't know why that's not the, again, I said this on Broken Silicon. It's almost like Microsoft doesn't know when their good ideas are great and when their bad ideas are horrible. It's like they have a lot of ideas and some of them are good and some of them are bad. But I think the Series S is a brilliant idea that I don't know if they know how good of an idea it is, because it could be their ace in the hole to taking market share. But yeah, Xbox price, the Xbox launch, but that was the timestamp too. So I think I more than answered your question and then rambled for 5 minutes. All right. Colt Marshmallow writes in and says, what do you think about covering ARM content? So I think this is a misconception, right? I would cover Nintendo stuff. I would cover ARM stuff. I will cover whatever interests me. I've done videos on Cerebrus. I've done from Hot Chips last year. I've done videos on Jingjia making GPUs in China. I've done videos on ARM before. However, I know which stuff I'm most interested in, and I know what stuff my fans seem to be most interested in. And so, and I've had sources say, do you want ARM information? And I'm like, yeah, send it to me. However, if I get a big RDNA 3 leak, I'm putting that out before I make an ARM video. And let's be honest, guys, is there a shortage of how much content I'm putting out? I put out a die shrink for patrons every other week. I do a live stream at least once a month. I do at least one video a week, often two. Broken Silicon every Wednesday without fail. And then I also do a flyover states like every few months and a hits and gems every few months for patrons. I mean, so it's like, would you cover ARM stuff? Yeah, if I think the story is big enough. But if I can cover some big Xbox thing, I'm doing that before ARM, you know? So it's like, yeah, I will cover all of these things. And by the way, I'm sure we're going to start getting some Switch 2 rumors early next year. And once we do, I'll probably cover that because I will be interested in that. I'll be more interested in that than ARM, probably. That's all I'm saying, guys. It's not that I don't want to cover ARM. It's just, it's like, come on, don't you want to hear about Ampere more than ARM? Most of you seem to. I mean, the numbers don't lie. Whew, all right, let us see. Break my voice. Let's see here. What do we got? Oh, here's a question. Thomas Stoberl, I hope I said that right, writes in, can AMD with OpenML provide enough RT performance to play Cyberpunk on 144 Hz 1440? Well, I'm not going to answer the rest of your question. I'll say this. My understanding, and again, this is all I can say, is my understanding, because AMD is insanely let me write this. I'm writing this down as a timestamp. AMD is insanely tight-lipped about RDNA 2. Is that from the sounds of it, it's significantly better than what's in Turing and unlikely to be better than what's in Ampere. That's really all I can say. Will that be enough to run Cyberpunk at 144 Hz 1440p? Well, we don't know how optimized ray tracing is going to be in Cyberpunk at launch. So I just can't answer that question. I can't. But what I'll say is it's going to be a lot better than Turing. So, you know, and Digital Foundry already said in their analysis of the PS5 demos that they thought for the hardware it was shown on, that this is definitely an upgrade to whatever Turing's going to be, at least once you get high-end cards with RDNA 2. So that's all, but we can't be exact. We can't give you exact numbers because they're just not there yet. I don't even know if AMD knows yet, right? They're still testing their cards. 50 Cal Proof says, when should I sell my MSI 1080 Ti? Well, whenever you can. Do you have a backup card right now? I would consider selling it now, right? I mean, again, guys, every graphics card's value will not be held as well once Ampere and RDNA 2 is out. It's not just the 2080 Ti. If the 2080 Ti is $600 on eBay, your 1080 Ti will probably be half that. And I think, what if the 3070 or 3070 Ti, if that's what it is is better than a 2080 Ti, and then it's like 500. Well, then the 2080 Ti is going to be like 350 on eBay. What do you think your 1080 Ti is going to be? Probably 250. It's an old card, dude. It came out early 2017. It's over 3 years old. It should not be worth a lot on eBay, in my opinion, just in general. So can you sell it now? I would. That's all I can say. I'm not telling you have to, and I know people get mad when I say to sell stuff, but that is my opinion, and you're asking it. Tygo Muniz says, for God, which game Mark Cerny is working? No, I'm not going to say. Sorry, ma'am. I'm not going to say. I already said God of War 2 is coming, should be out by late next year, but it's up to Sony when they reveal it. I know God of War demos are being shown. So, and I also know, again, what I've heard is ridiculous, honestly. What I've heard, I've actually had multiple sources say they're wondering if it's correct how many exclusives are coming. And what I've also heard is, and what me and Dan were talking about this when it comes to PS5 exclusives, there is kind of an argument to be made that around 2015, 2 years after the PS4 was out, Sony realized they had already won. And so they said, half of these games that are meant to come out in 2020 and 2021, don't make them PS4 games, guys. Already start making them PS5 games. So I think there's an argument that a lot of these exclusives are coming because Sony didn't need them for the PS4, if we're being honest. And so they said, take your time and make it ready for something like 4 times better than this at least. And I think that's what's coming, because what I've heard is everything you've heard is probably coming eventually. Not trying to hype you, but that's what I've been told. Whether it's SOCOM or, which I don't have proof SOCOM, or I know Bloodborne Remastered is confirmed. So I'll tell you that, but I'm not telling you the secret one because I can't. Not allowed to. I don't burn my sources. Because then they'll stop talking to me, dude. D-Man writes in, should I wait for Zen 3 with an NVIDIA 3000 series or get a 3900X? For 430? I would wait for Zen 3, man. I keep saying it. Wait for Zen 3. And if you can wait longer, Rocket Lake will come out and might cause some price wars. That's what I would wait for. I keep saying it. John Luke Penny writes in, I'm super hyped for NVIDIA's 30 series and plan on upgrading my graphics soon. Okay. I have a 10700K with a Maximus Hero 12. Should I consider upgrading my MOBO and CPU for PCIe 4.0? Look, if you're gonna get like something as strong as a 3070 or better, yeah, PCIe 3.0 is going to present some bottlenecks, especially at lower resolutions in some games. So if you're like a 300 hertz 1080p gamer and you want a 3070, it's going to be bottlenecked, dude. It's going to be bottlenecked by PCIe 3.0. Internally, I know Intel said that they know it was a massive mistake to not put 4.0 on Comet Lake. Like Intel knows it was a mistake. Like they know. So yeah, it's up to you though, man. I mean, and it's up to you. There's always a bottleneck. So if you don't care about a 10% performance loss at high frame rates, because again, it shouldn't hurt the minimum frame rates most likely, then I don't know, And Greg the Fleeka, I'm getting tired here. I'm gonna have to stop in a couple of minutes. So this is your last chance. Would run the 3000 card with 4.0 or 3.0 at launch? If so, why? I've answered this I'm going to say this, Greg, like just rewatch this live stream if you've missed it. I've said over and over, high-end Ampere is going to need 4.0 to get all of its performance. If the 5700 XT already, there's a few percentage point difference. What do you think is going to happen when something twice as strong as the 5700 XT comes out? I mean, come on. Ideas on 20 games for Gamescom event on the 27th. I don't know what that means, to be honest. 20 games for Gamescom? I don't really know what that means. Which game is Mark Cerny working on? Yeah, not telling you. All right, so I'll give this 2 more minutes. I think I'm caught up with at least the ones I can read. Yeah, again, don't write an article about me confirming SOCOM. I don't have any proof. None of my best sources can confirm it, but everyone's heard they're working on, SOCOM is such a common sense game for Sony to come out. They have like no online shooters anymore. So they should revive that one just objectively. I have not heard anything about Elden Ring, or at least if I have, I didn't pay attention. So, and Gurneil K says, "Oh, my voice is dying, guys. With all the PS5 news you've been getting, have you heard anything about backwards compatibility?" I mean, I'll make this a timestamp. Why not? Right? Backwards compatibility, PS5. Multiple people I've talked to that aren't directly working on it, when they look at the PS5's architecture, they say it really seems like they should be able to do PS3 backwards compatibility just through brute force alone. I mean, the Zen processor is more than enough to emulate the Cell now. The PS4's processor was not strong enough, but with some work, Zen 2 should be. And the graphics card's definitely strong enough to emulate even an Nvidia card, which you have to remember, Xbox has been using AMD since the 360, so that does make things a little easier to emulate, I believe. But yeah, there's no reason Sony can't do it. And I've even heard that the audio chip looks like something that could emulate a cell processor, but no one can confirm it's coming. And those are the sources that are kind of working on games. The people working on games tell me there's no reason the PS5 can't have PS3 backwards compatibility. But anyone who has my best sources says there's no info on it. None. Sony doesn't seem to care. So that's what I'm going to go with. What I will say is I hope Microsoft gets Sony to take it seriously. Right? That's my hope. This is why you want competition. But I just don't think it's going to be there at launch, and I hope it's added later. Because again, I think it's absurd. Like, PS Now is not the solution for backwards compatibility. That's ridiculous. Almost out of time. I see I have more tips. What is the challenge of making multi-chip GPU? The problem is having the OS, generally speaking, recognize that it's just one graphics card and then dividing up the resources between the two and then outputting it through a cable, right? That it's harder than a CPU. The CPU isn't directly outputting the graphics, right, into an HDMI cord. It's not, right? So, and already think about it, right? We've had multi-socket motherboards forever. So Windows is built to use multiple socketed CPUs. Graphics cards, it's just different. It's not as easy. However, I do know that RDNA 3 will at least have an I/O die, but it might just be an I/O die and a GPU chip. Now, that will still be a huge upgrade for them. Still. I mean, imagine you could have a full yield, have HBM, and then cut down the chip and then throw on a 384-bit bus and then cut down the chip more and put a smaller stack of HBM on it and sell it to Apple laptops. So having separate IO dies they can mix and match with various GPU dies is a big deal. But I still think multi-GPU is hard to do, even though I know Nvidia is working on it and so is AMD. Of course they're working on it, man. Okay, so there's that. Dean Manx gives me a tip. Tiago writes in, any info on PS5 Pro? Nope. Frequency upgrade? Nope. Or memory change? Nope. I know they debated upgrading to like 16 or 18 gigabit per second GDR6. I really hope they at least go to 16 because I know it could use the extra bandwidth. If they did that, it would be a huge deal. You know, if they go to 38 compute units, and I don't think they can increase the frequency much because of a logic limitation in RDNA 2. But 38 compute units and 16 gigabytes of GDR6, I mean, that would make it the best console for sure at that point in a hardware perspective. It's already close, but that would be that little bit it needs. I hope they did it. Again, it's not I hope they do it. I hope they did it. It's been in production for 2 months. 2 months, guys. So if they haven't upgraded the PS5, I mean, if they have upgraded it, it's like a really well-kept secret. That's what makes me lean towards no. Okay, last scan to make sure I haven't missed. Oh. Another tip there. Why don't we see scanning strobe backlight on monitors more? I'm not sure. I'd really love a proper strobed monitor with variable refresh in tandem. Look, guys, OLED is just going to solve all those problems once they come to monitors, and same with micro LED, I think. Tevin Ruff, missed the early super chat about CPUs. Question about consoles versus laptop desktop performance. I didn't see that one. All I can say is already you can get, like, yeah, like early next year, you'll get high-end laptops as strong as a PS5. You know, put a 3060 Max Q and a Zen 3 CPU in there. You're as good as a PS5 probably if you have a fast SSD. I think it's going to be hard to do this gen, though. You know, Ampere uses a bunch of energy. Maybe they'll make some mobile 7 nanometer ones, but maybe that's what they're doing too, saving 7 nanometer for the mobile chips. but I think it's going to be hard to beat the consoles in a laptop this year. You will, but it's going to be an oversized laptop. It'll be really expensive. Oh, I don't know what he asked, but that's my answer. All right, that is it, everybody. I got through it, and I need to close this before the stream is screwed up by YouTube. It goes over 2 hours. So have a fantastic week. I got this out of the way early because I have a huge guest coming up. It might come out a bit later. And then I've also got plenty of more videos coming as well. PSVR 2 info? Nope, but probably late 2021, Brandon. All right, see you, everybody.